I think the question sometimes should be, does society deserve the right to incarcerate people? And the way that you get that right is by doing some things right that we do not do right. And so the thing that moves us towards that goal is not more punitive sanctions. No. We've seen that, right? If you were tough on crime, we would make sure their schools function. Yet we allow for schools to function in the way they do, failing a lot of people and saying, well, I don't know what you're supposed to do about that, right? So if we really believe that crime was a scourge that we should eliminate, our efforts would be to change the conditions that help for crime to grow and flourish.
Throw your hands up if you with it, drop it. Thank you for joining another episode of Locked Up and Locked Out, the podcast. My distinguished guest today is Mr. Gary Winfield, our renowned senator, and from my understanding, you're about to get another hat to wear.
Working on elevating.
Okay.
Yeah. We haven't crossed the bridge yet, so I'm not. But all things look good for the majority.
That's great. So let's dive in to what you do, who you are, and let's talk a little bit about 503. You got the floor, man.
Yeah, so 503 is part of a long conversation we've been having in Connecticut about juveniles and what the brain science has told us and what we've known about brain science for a long time. Just for those who might not know, what we learned is that impulse control is a real thing in young folks. Yeah. And when we say young folks, juveniles, we're not just talking about 14, 15, and 16-year-olds. We're talking about people up to age, at least in the bill, 26, but we're talking about people even sometimes up to age 28, 29.
Given the demographics of where they're
and particularly
from.
males, right? Males' brains develop slower. So what happens in a human being is the lower region of the brain, the limbic system, develops faster, right? And then the frontal cortex develops slower. And so impulse control, which the frontal cortex has something to do with, is not always at its maximum as a person of my age, right? I'm old enough that it's well developed. It's cemented at my age now. And so when people are in certain situations, they're going to have a tendency to operate in a way that doesn't make sense to me, may not make sense to you, but is in a sense appropriate given their age, right? They're not going to be able to respond in a super thoughtful way. And so when we think about juveniles and some of the crimes they may have committed, that should be taken into account. And so this bill is, from my perspective, a really simple bill that says, because juveniles function differently, the law should treat them differently. It doesn't mean that the law should say you're absolved of your crime. What it means is that the law should take into account the possibility that the juvenile was acting as a juvenile, and the sentence should be in accord with that. And so what we're saying is juveniles should have the opportunity for review. And when that review happens, we should say, are there elements here that are reflective of the fact that they are juvenile? And if there are, should the sentence have something to do with that? And so we review the sentence, take that into account. And if they're not, maybe we shouldn't, right? And it seems like, to me, the most fair way of operating. But in a General Assembly, that's not the story as we find ourselves today.
So, to meet this threshold that you're talking about, being mentally prepared to not only have this hearing, but to be re-entered into society, how many different layers to that are there as far as the safeguards? Who's doing the checks and balances? Is that law enforcement? Is that community? I mean,
so this is a good question, because I think as this bill has moved forward, a lot of people have thought, now that you're potentially going to give the opportunity for review, what will happen is that someone will indicate that they were under 26 when the crime happened. So the way that the law has worked is if your sentence is under 50 years, you're going to be doing at least 12 years before you even get the opportunity for review. So,
Right.
so let's just
So
start
you're doing
off.
some hard time.
You're doing a minimum of 12 years, right?
Right.
If it's over 50 years, it's a 60% before you can. So, like, no matter what, 12 years is the floor before you get to review, not before you get out, before you get to review. So let's start there. If nothing else,
Right.
if nothing else were to happen for a safeguard, you know that whoever committed any crime and is looking for a sentence review has done a minimum of 12 years.
Right. Okay.
That's the start. Second, this is not a process where, so you hit the 12 years, you get out. It's not that process. It's a process where there are various levels of review. We bring in experts who understand the brain of the young person, who can speak to that. Victims get a say. They have to go before the board. So there are so many levels of review. And what I know from my interactions with folks who've been through the system is that some of them thought they were ready to go up for the review, and they couldn't make it through the review. Right. And so this story, as it's told, is a very simple story of you hit the age, you've met the requirements, you're going to get out. They're going to take into account your crime. They're going to take into account the impact of the crime on your victim. They're going to take into account your ability to get out and be successful. All of the things you want someone to review. But it is also the case that there are folks who have committed crimes, maybe some really terrible crimes, who are who are fundamentally not who they were in that moment. As a matter of fact, 5 years down the road from almost anything we've done, we're significantly different people, right?
Absolutely.
And so when we're talking about a period of 12 years, that's 5 times 2 plus, at a minimum, it makes sense to me that if they were in a space where impulse control was not something that they were the best at, that we try to figure out who's in front of us now. And not for the sake of protecting the victims, throw people away. Because in fact, many of these people who we're talking about were victims of crime themselves.
Absolutely. And it's troubling when you see, hear senators on the floor speak of people having their fair day in court and things of that nature when you've been wronged by an unjust system. Like it's like a person going tone deaf, not having a pulse on the reality that we most face in an unruly system that's geared by numbers.
If I could say something for a second, I struggle oftentimes when I hear people talking about having your day in court and it's fair. I don't know what that really means. And what I mean by that is fair to suggest that when we go into a court, we all have the same opportunity, because that's just not reality.
No, it's not.
If I appear in a courtroom and I appear as someone who doesn't have the funds to really fight this fight, I'm not going to have the same shot as someone who does have the funds. If I went to a courtroom and I got arrested and I couldn't get out of jail over the weekend, for instance, right? And so I'm stuck in the jail over the weekend. I look like crap. I smell like crap. I feel like crap. When I show up in court on Monday, the judge is going to see that, and I'm not going to appear in that courtroom the way that we have to think about the way some judges operate the courtroom.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to appear in the courtroom the way in which the judge thinks I should even appear in that courtroom. And some judges take offense to that, right? Now, have you had the opportunity that someone who had money to get out and show up maybe dressed up and cleaned up? No. Right? So every little thing has impact on what you get out of this system.
Absolutely.
Your skin color, whether we want to admit this or not, has impact on how you're viewed. Your age has impact on how you're viewed. Everything you do has impact on how you are viewed. And so I'm a little circumspect about whether I would call it fair or not. Did you get due process? Potentially, right? But does that necessarily mean fair? No.
But because me personally, in my personal experience, I never got a fair shot from the word go. It was like, you're going to jail. And when most people just hear PSI and these things, these words, and you hear a judge say, you're not fit for society, that you should not be in society. But majority of people that's coming home that did these lengthy bids are doing tremendously good in society, giving back, food drives, wherever there's need for a person to give a hand up or a helping hand. Majority of the time, I'm seeing people that look like me or people that been where I've been doing these great works of community activists work, helping the fellow human being out. Mm-hmm. And it's just a slap in the face to many when you hear, oh yeah, they had their opportunities, just like you said, in court, and then to look at the bill and to explain that to me. How do you have the numbers to justify a bill moving forward and passing, not only in the House, but the Senate, mm-hmm. and people talk over the bill to make sure that it dies, and make a new law and push the goalposts even further so you don't get what you worked hard for. I just don't understand. I know many of the people that watch me don't understand it.
Right. Yeah. So let me say this about numbers. Numbers are one thing, but that doesn't necessarily translate into having the votes, right? So, look, if you just look at absolute numbers of Democrats, right, and you assume that Democrats should be in a certain position, right, then yes, you have the numbers.
Right.
The reality is, what a Democrat is can be a lot of things.
Right.
You could be a tough on crime Democrat. You could be a more thoughtful on crime. I'm never going to say soft on crime.
Right.
You could be a person whose experience tells you that a victim is one thing, or whose experience tells you that a victim is another. I'll point out, and I think we talked about this a little bit before the show, before the podcast, that my concept of a victim is extremely different than the majority of people in the legislature.
Right.
And I've been known to say that when legislators talk about victims, they talk about one thing. Right. They talk about someone who had a crime of some sort, and usually they're talking about someone who never expected to have a crime visit them in their life.
Right.
In my life, I grew up with not an expectation that there would or wouldn't be crime, but just the reality that there is crime.
Right.
I think before I understood what a concept is,
right,
I was already introduced to crime as part of my reality, so I never questioned it. And so as a person who grew up in a certain space at a certain point in time, it's just part of my life that crime will happen. And I would point out on the floor of the Senate that, I would sometimes wake up and the TV was gone from the house.
Right.
All right, well, we'll get another TV when we have the money to get a TV.
Right.
I would be going to school sometimes and be like, well, I guess we're not going to school today because there's no car. Right. And on and on and on. And so there's an expectation of sorts that at some point crime visits me in my life.
Right.
Conversely, there are people, and many of them in that space that I operate in, who have never had a crime happen to them, at least not one that they understand as a crime. And so there's no expectation. So when a crime happens, everything halts. Right. But in my life and in the life of many of the people I know, if we halted at a crime, we could not function.
Right.
And so we come to these discussions differently. And some of the people who come to this discussion different than me are other Democrats. And so what I've often said to people is, don't walk in and go, there's this number of Democrats, there's this number of Republicans. You have to ask yourself, have I had the conversation with folks that they have told me they're with me? Because if you just look at the numbers, you're wrong. Right. And so that lays out the type of work that has to be done. You have to start each one of these discussions with, I have 0. And I have to get to whatever the requisite number is. So,
if I'm hearing you correctly, numbers are good, but it don't necessarily translate into the people that's voting.
Yeah.
So, if you look at 503, did they have the people that was voting for the bill for itself to pass?
Yeah, I don't know that they ever really did. I think that there was a back and forth about that question. Right. So can we take a step back? So 503 came into the session.
Right.
And there were a lot of people who've been around a while, who've been part of this conversation, who said, we're never getting 503. You know that, right? And there was another bill at the same time, because people were concerned about doing some of what we were doing in 503.
Right.
They were concerned about that. Another bill that didn't go to the 26 and under age.
Right.
And as I was observing this, I was like, we're having the same conversation again. I understand why, but we're having the same conversation again. And then there began all of this talk about, well, what else could we do, and the back and the forth. And then I said, we're not supposed to get 26 anyway, right? Like, that's how the story is supposed to be written.
Right.
I'm just running 503. As it is, it doesn't matter to me what anybody believes. I'm going to run it as it is, because that's the best shot that we're going to have
where we need to
of
be
getting it where it needs to be, which is why all of a sudden people are like, 503 is ready. What the hell is going on, right? Because to my mind, what would have happened had I not done that is the bill would have failed, and next year we would have come back with a similar conversation where it's, well, do we do 26 and under? Do we do 23 and under? Do we do 21 and change the date? Do we do all these permutations? And honestly, this conversation has been going on so long, I'm tired of the conversation. And so I just said, look, I have some juice here. I'm going to use the juice to push the 26 and under, so that even if we don't get it done, when we come back, the conversation is 26 and under. It's not all that other stuff. Right. And though I think some people see a failure here, that moving the conversation to only the 26 and under
is a big
step forward. Because honestly, the way the legislature works, you're probably talking 3 to 4 more years before you get there normally. And so that shift just shifted the timeline. And people have to understand the legislature doesn't function the way that linear life functions. The legislature functions in some very strange ways. And I think there are moments of opportunity that don't necessarily look like opportunity to everybody, but in fact are real opportunities to move the timeline.
Okay. And in a nutshell, basically, when this bill comes back, which it will come back for the next session, will you be standing there as an ally to push this thing forward?
Well, if I'm not an ally, you're in trouble.
No, just for, know.
I'm kind of being facetious, but absolutely. My positions on these things don't change easily.
Don't waver,
look, at some point, these people with these long sentences are coming out. I guess to my mind, the question is, how are they coming out? Are they coming out as people who we've kept in a system so long that it almost doesn't matter if they come out, Their life is such a huge part of their life is eaten up. There's just very little even left to their life. Are they coming out as people who have stayed in the system and endured all of the stuff that they may, in fact, be broken in ways that is very difficult to recover from? Like, that's my question, I care about victims. As I said, I've been a victim. I can't even list the number of crimes. But what I also care about is what are we doing here? I think sometimes the question is like, well, do they deserve to be a part of society? Back to what you pointed out, right? I think the question sometimes should be, does society deserve the right to incarcerate people? And the way that you get that right is by doing some things right that we do not do right. And so, like, this is not a one-sided question. It is a question of, yes, what did the individual before us do? But it's also a question of, are we incarcerating them to make a better society, which I'm not sure incarceration ever does, but if it ever does that, it's because we incarcerate them and take into account that they are human beings.
I think, and I'm in agreement with that. What I think is you have people on two different sides of the spectrum. People that never dealt with people that's been incarcerated and did time, And then you have those who have been affected some way, somehow, by people that's incarcerated. May it be a family member or a distant cousin or a friend of a friend that's been hurled into a system. But either way, when you have people that's desensitized in the sense of understanding the gravity of being incarcerated and having people with all the tools possible at their disposal. This is one of the things that I constantly work on, wraparound services. What does that entail? Having a place to stay upon release. That's a big problem. Because majority of people don't have any type of rental history with anybody. So people are scared to rent to you. And then getting to a job interview, having the ability to get a license. These things should be fast-tracked for people that's coming home even faster. It should be expedited in the sense that we understand where you at. We're going to meet you where you're at. We have a team to support you each step of your way if you want it. Because at the end of the day, just as that bill is doing, having multiple steps of people walking through, making sure the I's is dotted and the T's are crossed, that you're able to function upon release and that you're worthy of being released back into society. It's not a blanket check to where everybody's able to get home,
Sure.
but everybody's furnished the opportunity to get home. Yeah. Now it's up to you to do the work to make sure that people understand that you're more willing to do what it takes to meet whatever standard it is to get home, to reclaim your life.
Yeah.
And upon doing that, the next layers and steps should be the wraparound services that I'm trying to be so heavily involved with and trying to carve out.
Listen, I think the tough on crime crowd's logic doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
No.
Right? If I'm trying to be tough on a thing, if I'm trying to eliminate or reduce that thing, then I would take the steps, whether they are steps I initially understood were important or not, the steps to move towards that goal.
Right.
And so the thing that moves us towards that goal is not more punitive sanctions. No. We've seen that, right? There are states in this country that have significantly more punitive sanctions than Connecticut, and it hasn't reduced or eliminated crime. Connecticut's crime has dropped. Right? The things that are helpful to reducing and moving towards an elimination of crime, which you can never completely eliminate, but reduce crime, are things that we've always known, right? They are making sure that folks have opportunity in the beginning, which unfortunately we have not always done. Right. They are making sure that if folks have gone into our system and come out, that they're less likely to recidivate, and there are ways to do that, right? By making sure certain resources are available to them, and not just available because we put a resource in front of them, but available because that resource is actually functional in their life. So some of the things that we have done that we've thought, oh, we put a lot of money towards this thing, because we came up with it without understanding the lives that these folks are living, right? So investing enough in understanding the life that folks live, having come out of our system, that we create opportunities that are real for them. Right. Making sure that we have schools that function, right? If you were tough on crime, we would make sure that schools function. Yet we allow for schools to function in the way they do, failing a lot of people and saying, well, I don't know what you're supposed to do about that, right? So if we really believe that crime was a scourge that we should eliminate, our efforts would be to change the conditions that help for crime to grow and flourish.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, we can't just have lip service, talking about the things that we want to do, why it shouldn't be done, why it shouldn't be this way. But if you don't have no skin in the game and you're not doing anything to change the narrative, then you're part of the problem.
But let me say this. You always have skin in the game, whether you know it or not.
Absolutely.
Because the very people who are talking about this, upon whom crime hasn't been visited, are more likely to have a crime visited upon them if we don't get this right. And so even if you see this as detached from you in some other community, there are no real boundaries around communities, right? No. There are no ways in which you take yourself or you drive yourself from outside of your what you think of as a safe community through other communities, and that doesn't affect you at all. Each of us affects other people, even when we don't understand how we do.
Yes. So, what is your functionality in the Senate?
So, you mean in terms of my role?
Right.
So currently, of course, I'm the judiciary chair, so I have a direct impact on all of this.
Right.
The hope is with Marty Looney retiring as the Senate president, and some rejiggering of what the Senate is, that after the election, when we're done, I'll be the majority leader, which is positive. We've never had a black person as a majority. We've never had a black person in leadership. And I don't know that we've had people who have my background and experience, right? And so I think that will be helpful to a lot of the causes that we work on. You'll have someone in leadership who doesn't just feel like, I want to vote for this and it should happen, but someone who advocacy has been around this. My advocacy on these issues has been in place since before I ever got elected, right? I used to, years ago, go to the Capitol as an advocate and push for these issues. And so I think what you will see is the leadership helping to pull this along, engage with the other chamber and figure out how do we move folks, and talking to people from the position of a leader and saying, all of the things we've been talking about during this podcast. This is why this is important. We need this to happen, and hopefully that will help those who are in the position that I'm currently in to make this happen.
So my thing is, do you ever worry about coming from where I'm coming, people backdooring you? Like, say we come to a resolution about an issue, and after we've talked it out and we're in an agreement to something, in the ninth hour come to you or don't come to you, and next thing you know, they've changed their position. Does that happen a lot? And when it do, what is the conversation around that?
Yeah, it does happen. I don't know if I quantify it as a lot or not, but it does happen. And, I think oftentimes when that happens, it's because people were happy to get to yes and they just moved on once they got to yes. I think in that environment, people have to remember that you're not just dealing with what people actually believe. You're dealing with what they actually believe and what they can go out to people who have a lot of control over whether they stay in that space or not. And tell them, right? And sometimes when you say, look, I believe X, and you go out, you get your head taken off, right? And so I think what happens sometimes is people go, that makes sense to me. And they go out and they talk to their constituent. Their constituents are like, have you lost your mind? And they come back and they say, I would love to be with you, but I can't. Right? And so I think part of what needs to happen on the tougher issues, and this is what happened when I helped to abolish the death penalty, part of what needs to happen on these issues is folks need to spend a lot of time with people, even when it feels like they've gotten to yes. If that yes feels tenuous at all, you have more work to do. And I also think that when I did that work on the death penalty, I was not trying to just get you to say yes. I was trying to get you to say yes because you understood something. You understood the actual impact. You understood the tone and the texture of this issue in communities beyond your own. And so the way that I did that was I would go to, like, if I would come to you and I would come and I would say, Adam, listen, I'm trying to abolish the death penalty. And I would like to know what your position is and give you an opportunity to speak. And then I would leave and I would think about what you told me. And then having thought about what you told me, I would come back to you and speak to you through understanding what you've said and say some things to you that I think might make you think more deeply about this. Not that would necessarily get you to say yes. Then I would leave again. And I would one more time come back to you and say, so listen, we've had an opportunity to speak about this a couple of times. I am working on it. I'm doing vote counts. Where are you? And let me tell you what happened. A lot of people who had been very much staunch advocates of the death penalty said to me, you're not going to believe this, but I'm with you.
Right.
Now, here's the question. Why were they with me?
Right.
They were with me because prior to that, it was, are you with me or not? And when someone would say no, everybody would say, you're a villain, you're terrible, you're whatever pejorative term. Did you ever have to think about it?
No.
No, because we characterize you as one thing. But the way I did it, you had multiple opportunities to think. You had to hear stuff without somebody telling you who and what you were. And for some folks, that's all it took for them to think a little more deeply, to investigate, to do things they never had to do before. And I know that's a lot to ask advocates to do. But if this issue is as important as we say it is,
you're gonna do the work.
Then that's the work we have to do.
Right. So, being that you see so many different things play out in real time, and everything is fluent, what's some of the bills that recently passed that you're proud of? I believe probably all the bills that you're behind, that you're proud of them, but what really set the bills that I'm talking about aside from the others?
I'm fortunate to have to think about this because there are a lot. I say to folks that I'm really proud of the fight we had around Clean Slate.
Oh, yeah.
That we didn't just follow what everyone else at the time was following, where it was we're going to wipe off these misdemeanors and keep it rocking.
Right.
That I was able to get into a fight with the leadership of the state and prevail upon them to include felonies, right? If you think back at that time, there was a conversation about felonies, but no one was passing felonies.
No.
If you started talking felonies, they thought you had lost your mind.
Dead.
But here's the thing. If we really believe, which everybody says in all the states that have done anything on this, everybody says, oh, well, people need a second chance and all this stuff. You can't believe that and then leave people with felonies on, right? And so to me, it was important to do that. It was important to me when we did the cannabis work, but it wasn't the legalization that was important. It was that what I was able to do here that was different was to say, 5 or 6, maybe 7 companies will make some money off of this cannabis thing. That doesn't help everybody.
Right.
What will help everybody is to think about the damage that was done and to think about how do we return something back to folks for having done that damage. And that's why we created the Social Equity Council to give opportunities for communities, right? In a sense, a form of reparations. Folks don't even think about that, right? And that hadn't been done anywhere.
That's powerful.
And so to my mind, it is the doing of maybe some of the things that other folks have done, but doing it in a way that really reflects what that issue means in community.
Right.
And that's why I'm proud of any of the work I've done, because the difference of me being there is that I am so close to these issues. I live amongst people who have these issues, right? I've never run from my community. I live in New Orville, and I'm not moving from New Orville. I live right next to a bunch of stuff going on. And that's important,
right?
Because that lens is always brought to bear. It's not whether advocates show up or not.
Right.
Someone in this conversation always has that lens.
When the lights go off, you still there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's powerful because when you think of an ally or somebody representing you, that's what you want. You want them to be there, good, bad, or indifferent. And what a lot of people fail to realize is that people's seats are going to be uprooted.
Yeah.
You make your decisions, and many times you have to live with the consequence of your decisions. And this particular bill, a lot of people are mad, feeling as if they were cheated, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I believe wholeheartedly when people start seeing that they're no longer in them seats, that the other people are going to feel kind of stressed in the sense that not thinking that it could have happened, but it did happen. And it's not, to take people for granted or your position for granted when you're a public actor.
Yeah.
And because you when we look back, we seen a lot of people pandering, a lot of people lying from our perspective. And, I'm gonna call it how it is. And then making it appear to be another way in front of the cameras.
Yeah.
So when the cameras are off, everybody want to play nice.
See, I can't lie, right? Because I live in a neighborhood with the same people.
Right.
They come to my house, but
and they see you at the store.
And they see, right?
I ain't like what you did.
Yeah.
But that's what separates you from many.
Yeah.
You're accessible. You allow yourself to be out there, and for your constituents to be able to talk to you. And that in itself is special because you haven't forgotten who you represent and who you wanted to represent from the beginning. And that's very key to, I believe, your success. And I believe we're going to be behind you 100% in anything that you do because you've put your money where your mouth is. And that's something that many people don't do these days. They talk with a forked tongue. But the people like I talk to all the time, it's like, man, we don't know how to duck smoke. We run to it,
Right.
And that's what change is all about. A change of the guard, so to speak.
Can I offer something?
Yes.
So my experience tells me that we sometimes peering into the system have a hard time seeing what's real.
Right.
And sometimes the fire we have is for people who are actually helpful to us.
Okay.
Because we don't necessarily understand how these things work.
Okay.
And so one of the things that I hope folks who are interested in this issue, and I hope they are also interested in other issues, but folks who are interested in this issue recognizes part of the game is to understand the system itself, whether you like it or not. It's to understand the system to be able to discern whether people are actually helpful or not. Because sometimes people's actions will seem like they're not helpful because, ostensibly I would just be I would do one thing or the other, but you realize when you understand the system better that action that looked like it wasn't helpful was really helpful.
Right.
And the reason I bring that up is because there are some folks who are true to what they say who sometimes catch a lot of hell. Right? And it's because we haven't learned enough about what it is we're observing to understand. And when you shoot at people who are actually helping you all the time, you're not helpful to yourself. Right. And so I'm not saying that's true of everybody.
Allies, right.
That's clearly there are people who are just lying to us. Right. But you need to know so that you don't make the mistake of actually taking down one of your allies.
So what do you in your best words, how do you come up to speed to understanding where an ally lies versus the smoke screens?
I think what folks need to, before they even get into whether Gary or Adam or anybody's telling them the truth in the system, is just invest some time in saying, how much do I know about this system? Do I actually know how a bill goes from a concept to a law? Right? Because a lot of us jump. I did this when I was an advocate. I jumped in, right? I had something I believed should happen. And if you didn't do it, you were the problem.
Right.
It's true-ish, but it's not true. Right? And so, in the beginning, I didn't understand that there were things that happened after the bill came out of the committee and hit the floor. I didn't understand there was screening between it. When I was first an advocate back in 2000, I didn't know that. And so I'd be like, well, why don't you just move the bill? Because they're not the ones touching it, right? And so what I'm saying is, there's a lot to learn. And I've had the good fortune of being able to work with some advocacy groups and say, hey, let me just run this down for you. Right. So that and some of them are like, I've been in that building 6 years and I didn't know that. Well, that's information you have to know because you might be looking at a person, I'll just use me to not call anyone else's name. You might look at Gary and go, well, well, Gary didn't do this or that. And it's like, that's not for Gary to do.
Right. That's
and
your work.
That's your work or someone else's work.
Right.
And maybe, at this part of the process, you take a shot at Gary, but at that part of the process, you take a shot at someone else. And if you only focus on this person is getting off scot-free while they're looking you in the face and say, I would love to help you.
Yeah.
Right. So investing the time to really understand how the process works makes your advocacy stronger, makes your advocacy better.
Right.
And, some of this is written in rules that no one reads, right? But they're right there for people. And some of this you learn over time, or you can take a person like me who's willing to say, I'll shortcut the whole thing for you.
Right.
Have those conversations and then move forward.
Right. Because there's going to be times where it's not a yes. But that's what a true partnership looks like. You know what I'm saying?
And understanding on average, to get some of the bigger things done takes 5 to 7 years. Right. A lot of people come in there like it's year one, they didn't win, even though they made progress, they didn't win. They're like, oh, they sold us out. It's like, well, a lot of times it takes a lot of time to move through this process. So again, I just think people should not come in with the expectation that one thing or the other necessarily means that people are helpful or not.
Because I was under the impression like, okay, if you ain't for me and you say at one point you're with me, then turn around you're not with me. You're not an ally. You're a foe.
Right. A lot of people have that. But I'll give you an example without mentioning the advocate. There's an advocate who's been working on a bill for about 6 years.
Right.
The bill actually passed this year.
Okay.
There were a lot of Democrats who wanted to help that person, not all Democrats. And almost all the Republicans were against this person. When the bill passed this year, Republicans were pushing for the bill, right? Some of the same Republicans who were against the bill in the beginning.
Right.
They didn't understand the concept in the beginning. They weren't listening, right? Because this person was new and they'd never met this person before. So why am I listening to you?
Right.
But as time went on and this person came back again and again, it was like, well, what are they talking about?
Right.
What is this thing? And I don't like that, right? Like I want the good stuff to get done right away.
Right.
But it's part of the process. You are dealing with human beings who are inundated with a lot of issues, trying to learn them all. And the question is, can you stick around long enough to prevail? That's part of how this works.
Right.
That doesn't sound great to anybody, I know. But it's something people need to know if they're going to enter this space. I've had people who are working on some really good stuff. They go for a year, maybe 2 years, and they're like, I'm never coming back again. Well, any momentum you may have gained, you've lost because you walked away from the process.
Right. Listen, man, it got to be a part 2 to this, man.
Yeah.
Because it's very informative, and people just need to know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with not knowing, but when you have an outlet to becoming in the know, to come into the know, and understand the intricate parts of the Senate and the House and the discourse at times, which looks at the end of the day could be the ability of something functioning and properly working as it should. We need to know all that, and we need to bring that into our communities firsthand, because there's a lot of bills that's being passed, and there's a lot of bills that people are trying to pass that we just need to know about. The redistricting of votes. How is that happening today?
That's a good question. So first, let me say I'll come back whenever you call for me.
Thank you.
Because for me, what I think is one of the most important things I've ever offered beyond bills is the knowledge I've gotten. I'm completely willing to share.
Right.
Because at the point where I ran, I was not trying to run and be in politics. I didn't like people in politics. But I think it became something that I understood as important for me to run.
Right.
And so if I can give away that knowledge and do some shortcutting for folks and maybe get someone who's not trying to be in the system, and they can do the kind of work that I've done, then we are all helped by that. In terms of redistricting, as you're seeing it across the country, Connecticut functions differently. We didn't have a partisan form of redistricting.
Right.
We had a nonpartisan form, so all of the players are involved. We use a system that is transparent. And so in that respect, here in Connecticut, I don't think it will be the issue that it is in other places.
Okay.
But of course, there are folks who, because of what they're seeing in other spaces, want to have a conversation about redistricting. We do it on a decennial process, the every 10-year process. We do it in a nonpartisan way. There always got to be people who don't like what they got. There's no way to do redistricting without that. But it is a process that actually works here in Connecticut.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Winfield, man, it's a pleasure, man, having you on Locked Up and Locked Out. And our family is your family, man. And listen, just keep doing the honorable work that you're doing. And I'm pushing for you, and I know a whole bunch of other people pushing for you, and proud of the work that you're doing and the legacy that you're leaving. Yeah. It's some big shoes to fill. Yeah. Just keep doing and plugging away, man, as you do. And we thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Oh, man, blessings, man. Yes.